gold nuggets. Now, not the restaurant chain, but back in 1849, the 49ers, those guys in the West that had discovered gold, and they'd come out to find their way, make their riches. They would dig around in the dirt all of their lives sometimes for years and years and years, digging in dirt, digging in caves, looking for those golden nuggets. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about nuggets. Okay? We're going to talk about nuggets as they pertain to religion. Okay? Now I'm a Christian minister. I've been a Christian minister for quite some time, 30 years or more. And but I've come in my walk to realize some things. I believe that as believers, in whatever religion we associate ourselves with, that we need to walk with our eyes open and not just simply accept everything that we're taught, even in the holy books, as gospel truth. But to look at these books that were undoubtedly written by men, by the hands of men, as sort of like the caves and the earth that those 49ers were looking for gold nuggets in, and recognizing that in all of our holy books, scattered within our holy books, are nuggets that will give us enlightenment and understanding about the reality of things, okay? And so we're going to talk about understanding that the unknown is not chaos, okay? That the unknown is actually an intelligent order. We just haven't figured it out yet. The unknown is not chaos. Now there was a time before we understood the stars and the planets, before we understood the storms on earth, and before we understood why plants grew, why people live and why people die. Those topics were chaos until we began to understand, and we understood there was an order to the stars, an order to the planets. There was even an order to storms. We could track them on our smartphones today. And of course there's an order to life and an order to death. And there's an order to plant growth and life and all that stuff. There's order to everything. There are seasons even for those plants. But at one time it was chaos. We didn't know. And what I want to suggest today is the things that we still should be on this journey of discovering, okay? And recognizing those things that we just write off, especially as religious people, that we can't embrace because it's science, are the very foundations of who we are and what it is that we are to believe. And even as we look through our religious holy books, we'll find nuggets in there trying to give us hints that there is more to us, okay? And so we're going to look at the idea of quantum mechanics today. Now, I'm no expert. I'm just a fan. But I want to suggest is that there is a reality to the quantum physics thing that is a reality to us as human beings, as spiritual people. And when I talk about spiritual, I'm not talking about religious. I'm talking about spiritual, as we all spiritual, that animated part of us, the alive part of us, the part of us that communicates, the part of us that thinks. That's the spiritual part of us. And what's interesting is that's the real part of us, the alive part of us. When you're looking at someone in a casket, they're not alive, they're not there. The part of them that was there is gone, that animated part, that spiritual part. And so what's interesting is the spiritual part of every human being is invisible. You can't see it. So when the individual is dead, you see the body laying there. But you don't see that individual because the animation, the spirit part is gone. So what I really want us to focus on then today is that spirit part of us is invisible. You only see it as it inhabits this body and brings this body to life. But there is no visibility of the individuals who we actually are. And I'm going to say there's a relationship between us and the unknown. Because really we are unknown. Because even that animated part of us, and we understand that part, we understand the life, we understand the death, but we really can't comprehend why. We can't comprehend why the spirit leaves, other than, well, the body is old, decrepit, or there's an accident or something and it gets crushed. But what about that invisible part of us? Where do we go? At the moment that you see me, I'm simply inhabiting this body, but the me is invisible, but it's alive, it's here. You see the evidence of me in how the body responds to me, but you can't see me, okay? Very important. And so when we even begin to look at the sciences and the things that we thought were chaotic, were unknown, turned out there was an order we just didn't comprehend. And as we begin to comprehend through Copernicus and Galileo and Einstein and all these guys, we begin to see an order of things. And this order of things was what was called classical physics, where you could see this stuff and you can understand how they would respond to each other. But then there came this thing called quantum physics, quantum mechanics, which I'm, again, not an expert at, but I am intrigued by. And I see a correlation to us as spiritual human beings that we should not be neglecting. It's so easy for religious folks to sort of shy away and shun science. But what I'm suggesting is that science that we're shunning simply because we don't understand is a very real part of us. And I don't, some of the scientists and physicists may not understand this or buy this, what I'm about to say, but we are not simply observers. And I know we're trying to observe these things, understand the wormholes, understand the qubits, understand all this stuff. With Einstein and his time, space, and the gravity issue. Things that we can't see, but we can see the result of and the effects of it, so we can kind of deduce that thing actually exists. The point being that rather than simply observers, even of these things that we can't see, but we can see the results or the evidence of, we need to begin to see ourselves as part of it. Because we're made of the same substance when you break it all down. So we are a part of this quantum thing, we're just not observers of it. And when we, especially as spiritually minded folks, and the religious folks particularly, we can begin to see that a lot of the things, the nuggets that we pull out of Scripture that seem to be supernatural, that seem to be amazing, and all this stuff is really not amazing when we see ourselves as part of the quantum mix and not just observers. But what's very important, in order for us to do this effectively, we're going to have to set aside the religions. The religions are the caves. The religions are the dirt. The religions are the things that we have to dig our way through to find the nuggets. But it's the nuggets that are valuable. It's the nuggets that we need to be focusing on. It's the nuggets that folks gave their lives for, gave all of the years of their lives and even their actual physical lives trying to attain these nuggets, because the nuggets is where the value is, not in the dirt that they're embedded in. And the religions are the dirt that they're embedded in. And I'm not disrespecting the religions. I'm just saying there are so many, there's like over 4,000 religions. The primary ones we know, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, the primary one, Hinduism and all. But all I'm saying is, if they were legitimate, they would be in agreement. The names may be changed, but they would be in agreement. The names would be changed because of languages and cultures, but they would be in agreement. So the dirt and the caves are not valuable. And the religions aren't really valuable. It's the nuggets that are contained within those religions, within the teachings, within the holy books, that we're not even identifying as nuggets, because we're looking at this whole thing as the whole. If I look at this book as the inerrant, infallible word of the Creator, then I'm not going to be able to deduce that there are within this creation of men actual nuggets that are insights and hints from the Creator. And so really this is sort of like an introduction to just setting religion aside, to recognize that if we don't see ourselves as unified human beings, because we are all part of this giant thing called the universe, then we're missing the point, and we'll never get to where we're supposed to get to, because we've ingrained ourselves too deeply into our individual caves, into our individual religions. We have to set those aside and recognize the nuggets. And what I want to suggest to you, the nuggets are pointing us to believe that we're to understand certain concepts, even like time travel, as crazy as that might sound. And even as believing you're receiving something that you don't see. and recognizing even that there is a connection between you and everything else on this planet, and that your actions dictate results that are even found on the other side of the world, not to mention in your own family, in your own life, and in your own communities. It's very important. And so that what I want to share and suggest, sort of just for us to think about, or maybe 2 or 3 basic physics theories. Like there's a theory called the entanglement theory, okay, where it's believed that a particular thing here could determine or manipulate something that's way somewhere else, where you could pull a string here and it will tug there. Things that are unbelievable that you might think you'd see on Star Trek are theorized to be real simply because the mathematics render them correct. And what I'm suggesting is even something as unbelievable and far out as this entanglement theory, that 2 things can be so far apart but exactly affecting each other in what they are. That's our belief and our prayer life. And what we are supposed to be embracing, even as believers. We believe that. We believe that our actions affect other things. We reap what we sow. I mean, that right there is a tenet, an entanglement theory. What we do creates. What we do affects. There's another particular theory called the uncertainty principle, and this is kind of wild. Where you never know what something is until you actually see it. And there is this particular experiment, imaginary experiment of a cat in a box. And is the cat alive? And you put poison or cyanide or something in that box. Is the cat dead or is the cat alive? Well, from a physics perspective, the cat is both. It's in what's called a superposition. It's both. And it doesn't become alive or dead until you look at it. Now that's kind of far out, huh? Well, how would that apply then to a religious person's belief? It would be when you are praying and believing for something. And you're supposed to believe that it can happen, or that it's going to happen, because that's what faith is, believing in what you don't see. But the thing is, we're also told, and this is in the biblical scripture, that God is able to do exceedingly abundantly more than we can ever ask or even seek or even think to ask for. Therefore, we find sometimes that we could be praying for such a thing, desiring and believing that it's there. What is the definition of faith according to Scripture? The definition of faith is the evidence of things not seen. Okay, so you're believing that it's there, you just don't see it yet. But then we're also given to understand that God knows better than we are. He's going to do exceedingly abundantly more than we could ever even thought to ask for. Therefore, we don't even really know what we got until the box is open. That's the uncertainty principle. We don't know. We have this time thing, man. We look through all the religions. Basically, they have time travel. Somebody was here and then they were theirs. And all that's good stuff. Well, time travel? Well, we find out with Einstein and his little imagination, and then experiments and all, that time can be manipulated. Time, depending on where you are, slows down or speeds up. Time. And so we should be able to time travel if we could ever truly grasp this concept and find a way to utilize it and manipulate it, for our desires. And so time is that gravity has to do with time and space, and the gravity tugging. And so Scripture gives us to understand that the end of time, that time will be no more. So we use that phrase a lot. When is the end of time? When is the end of time? But let's just really think about what we're saying there. We're not saying when is the end of life. We're not saying when is the end of all that we can know or conceive. What we're saying is when is the end of time. Okay? And it's very interesting, an interesting thought that my mother, she passed away when she was 97 years old, and she was a believer. And when she was about 95 years old, I asked her one day, I said, I have a question for you. I said, when will the end of time be? What do you think? And I was really curious to what a person her age, with her experience, with her knowledge and her beliefs, what she would feel the end of time would be, or when the end of time would be. And what she said to me is that when you die, that's the end of your time. And at first I thought she was blowing me off, and then I got to thinking about it, and that is very profound. When you die, that is the end of time for you. Okay? So we're talking about time, the manipulation of time, the speeding up of time, the slowing up of time. We're talking about when time ends, if time can end. And then we're talking about you as an individual who really is simply inhabiting this body. What is time? Time isn't about you, the animated you, the spiritual part of you, the part of you that's simply inhabiting this body. The creation of time is what we have created as human beings for these bodies. To understand how long it's going to get from here to get to there, to understand this task or that task, or when I want this accomplished, when I want that accomplished, or when I should go to bed, when I should wake up. All these things, these time constraints that we have come up with, all center around these bodies that we are dwelling in. Okay? Hasn't anything to do with the real us, with the spiritual us, that animated part of us that's simply inhabiting these bodies, which require time that we can live these bodies by. But once the body is no more, and once you are free, where do you go? And for you, time is no more. It's very interesting. So time being no more isn't the end of everything. It's simply the end of time. Okay? And I remember my mother was on her deathbed, and it was the night before the morning she passed. And my brother and I, it was 10, 11 o'clock at night, we were standing on either side of her. And she was kind of half out of it. I'm not even half out of it, like 90% out of it. And then all of a sudden she goes, "Where are my kids? Where are my kids?" I said, "Mom, all your kids are fine. They're all fine." And then she began quoting. And she was out of it. Her eyes were closed, and she was like halfway gone. She was saying, "I walk by faith and not by sight. I walk by faith and not by sight. I walk by faith and not by sight." Think about that. I. Who was the I in my mother that day? Was it her body? Or was it that spiritual part of her that had been confined to that body for 97 years? And now she is saying she walks by faith and not by sight. Not by what she sees, but by what she believes. Like that superposition. She didn't know what, but she knew that. And so that's what I'm giving today, is just an opportunity to sit back and think, and as human beings, not to reject the science. And as for scientists, not to reject the spirituality of human beings, because that invisible spirituality is no different than the invisible forces that are being demonstrated, that are being observed, or at least the effects of, in quantum physics. We are of that. We are that. We are an invisible force that's simply a part of that. And what's interesting, and I was considering Einstein. Now, Einstein wasn't a great mathematician. He would be contemplating things and thinking about things and coming up with these theories, and then have to find a mathematician to make sure the math matched what he was theorizing. Very interesting. He was more like a dreamer, a contemplator, an imaginer, a very powerful man. And so then I'm looking at some of these nuggets that we find in these holy books. And some of these nuggets that talk about time travel. Some of these nuggets that talk about believing what you don't see, but then not realizing what you actually have until you see it. Talking about how you reap what you sow and the relationship we have with one another. Even in Scripture giving us to understand not to return evil for evil, to understand that there was a response, there was a consequence to our actions, good and bad. So try to do good. Try to affect what is invisible. Try to affect what we can't see by doing things outside of the ordinary that are good. And what's interesting is that we, the invisible part, the animated part of us, that is invisible, that is simply occupying this temporal being to simply function, is being moved to use these bodies to do the right things, because there will be an effect that is positive or negative if we don't. And so there is much more to life. As we are all spiritual, everyone is spiritual. And so the religious person believes that the body goes to heaven, and you got a new body and new shoes and wings. You're going to walk all over God's heaven and all. The scientist believes that no, you just die. Your body becomes fertilizer and a different kind of energy, and maybe feeds the plant, and all this stuff becomes that. And so what I'm suggesting is that the religious people are assuming that there is a body to them. Your body is not you. You are the invisible, the animated part, simply occupying this, which is proof when you pass away and that body is still living there, but you're not there anymore. And then the scientist is like, no, you just die. How can the scientist say that that invisible, animated part of you no longer exists? I believe both are missing it. We need to recognize that that invisible part of us is part of this invisible continuum that we're looking at. This invisible universe with all of the invisible stuff inside that's having an effect. And I don't want to talk about wormholes and event horizons and black holes and all that, because nobody really knows. But it is very interesting. So this is where we're going to be. This is the third episode of 50. I'm going to do 50 of these episodes through this year. And what's interesting, I don't even know where they're going, because this is only the third one we're doing right here. We're just airing them as we go along, and I'm going to put them in book form, and maybe I'll start the book form after about 15 programs. I don't know how we're going to do that. I don't really know where this is going. All I know is this is very important. And to be clear, how I came into this thing, that I had been raised in church. The whole God, Pentecostal church, all that kind of stuff. And then I joined the military at 17 years old, and it wasn't long before I became an atheist, because it wasn't long before I realized how ridiculous the religions were that we had bought into. And one of the ridiculous aspects of the religion were that each one was saying all the other ones were going to hell, or whatever their rendition of hell was, and they were going to be, going to heaven. And that didn't make logical sense to me. That these guys just figured out that their little group is going to be okay, and every group figured that way. So I was an atheist for like 10 years, and just living a life, a young man. I was a military guy, and then I was a civilian in the corporate world. I was just living the life of just an atheist, party life, good life, just doing the stuff guys do. And then I was 28 years old, and one night I couldn't sleep. And that night, I realized that there was deity, what I call deity. And I believe that even as I read the Christian scripture, and I read that Jesus met people that the religions deemed unclean, I got from that the reality that Jesus met them wherever they were, okay? And so when I read that, that's a nugget that I'm reading in this book that was written by men, that you will be met wherever you are at. Okay? And so I was spent that morning, but all my reference was the Christian religion, which I had left when I was 17 years old when I joined the military. So that's what I became. And then I began this journey, and it was a good journey. So I'm not knocking the religions, because you have to start somewhere, and you have to gain insight, understanding, knowledge. I wouldn't have a thickness of biblical scripture had I just rejected all religion. This was the path that I was to walk. And this, I was 28 then, and I'll be 67 in 3 days, in November of 2025, 3 days from today. That's a long time. and so what I'm suggesting today is that I just came to the place in time, in walk. And I mean, I function in the church as a deacon, as a teacher, as an elder, as a pastor for over 20 years. But functioning in juvenile detention for 13 years, in the neighborhoods for years, teaching busting kids from the communities for years, then speaking to the congregations as I was a staff pastor in a local church. So I've been busy, and I've been studying, and I've been learning, and I've been gleaning. So whatever insight that you personally receive, at least from me, it came in time, it came in dedication, it came in study. Scripture gives us to understand that if we seek, we'll find. If we knock, it will be answered. If we ask, it will be answered. If we knock, it will be opened. But so when we come to the point in our belief system where we think we know everything, we're no longer knocking, we're no longer seeking, we're no longer asking, and nothing is going to be coming. I don't know about you, but I want to know more. I want to understand. I don't want to just settle for just what everybody's settling for. I want more if it's real. Another nugget in the holy text is that Jesus said that the truth will make us free. So what is truth? Well, we have to keep seeking. And what I'm suggesting today is why it's important. It's important to recognize that the religions are like the caves in the earth, but within each religion, within their holy books, are particular nuggets, of reality that we need to find as being valuable and holding on to and trying to understand. And it's going to be a while. It takes a while to understand. Just as it took a while to understand the stars, it's taken a while to understand the quantum physics. All I'm suggesting is at this particular point with this whole quantum physics aspect, that we need to place ourselves in the equation. We need to recognize that we are part of the quantum physics. We are part of what is there. And if we, who happen to be alive, who happen to be animated and thinking, there is a point in this for us. So as much as we are of the substance of everything else that exists, we have to recognize that we are special in that we are animated, that we are thinking, and that we are able to inhabit these bodies and use these bodies to create things, even to create the tools to understand what will be more about us. So no, we're not just like everything else, or well, they're in this, there is a purpose. There is what we find. And what we're learning, and see, with the whole quantum physics thing, it's like we really don't know why things happen. We simply just know that things happen. We don't know how we come into life. We don't know how we inhabit this body and that we are animated in animation that you can't see. I would tell the kids at detention, and when I explain this concept, that if I would cut off my hand, it wouldn't change me. It would simply change the body. If I lost my feet, it wouldn't change me. It simply changed the body. So the body is not me. So we don't know how. We simply know that. And so it has to do with everything that we're putting our hand to do to understand. But I'm telling you, we are closer now. We weren't closer when we were figuring out what the trees were and what the storms were and the stars and the sun and the moon and all that stuff. At that time, the religion was satisfactory, and it was like maybe even a brace for our legs to keep us focused in a positive direction, hopefully. But there comes a time, even if you need a brace on your leg as a young kid, once your leg is grown into it and it's fine, that brace needs to come off so you can walk straight and attain higher heights. And so what I'm suggesting today, we are in that place now where it's important for us to remove ourselves from these earthly trappings that we believe are everything that we are about, and to recognize that no, we are not of this, we are of that. And always maintain as a reminder, you are invisible. You are simply the spiritual part of the animated part of this thing that has inhabited this body, that's keeping the body alive, and that one day you will leave. You will probably not cease to exist. But for you, time will be no more, because time is a particular constraint that is built around these bodies that we're dwelling in. So time will be no more. So that's why it's so important. It's such a waste of time to be not doing the best we can with what we've been given. And not to live as long as we can. And I mean quality of life. That's why, if you follow me, I believe we should be eating right, and we should be exercising, doing all the things that we know we're supposed to do to keep ourselves healthy and to keep ourselves around a while. Because it's that individual, here we go, animated part of us that's given responsibility for this thing that we're dwelling in. Yet not understanding or comprehend, first of all, the connection that we have with everybody else on this planet, and how important that we each are as individuals. We don't take care of ourselves like we should. It's like you're in a vehicle. Say you're in a rowboat, a big rowboat, and everybody has their own oar, and in order to get to a particular destination, we all have to be rowing in sequence. But we don't recognize the relationship we have with everybody else on this boat, and we're just going off, maybe rolling backwards or going the other way, or just not even rowing at all sometimes, rowing when we want to. We are one unit, and we are going in one direction. And we need to recognize the relationship that we all have with each other, and we don't. And what I'm suggesting is, although the religions, the braces may have been good for a time, if you don't take that brace off and your leg is getting big and you're growing up, it's going to become a detriment to the function of that leg. And I'm just suggesting that as important as the religions were, up to a certain point, there comes a point where we have to begin seeing the science and seeing the relationship that science has to us that the religion was pointing toward. Okay? There is no order, there is no chaos in the unknown. There is actually intelligent order in the unknown. We just haven't discovered it yet.